I'm counting down 15 reasons why you need to be careful when shopping at Lidl. From metal fragments in your biscuits to Listeria in your frozen food to children's cereals with more sugar than ever. Number 15. The metal hiding in your food. Let's start with something that sounds impossible but keeps happening. In February 2024, Lidl recalled 3 varieties of Towergate cookies, chocolate, lemon and choc chip, because metal fragments were found in the biscuits. In November 2024, they withdrew their entire Meadow Fresh potato salad range after copper metal was discovered in the tubs. In October 2025, Lidl pulled XXL caramel stroopwafels from shelves. The reason? Metal fragments in the packs. And it's not just metal. In December 2023, Fincare white chocolate was recalled for plastic contamination. In 2025, Simply Roasted and salted cashews were pulled after glass was found inside the packets. How does this keep happening? These aren't isolated accidents. They're symptoms of a supply chain where quality control is failing repeatedly. When you're squeezing suppliers for the lowest possible price, corners get cut. Machinery doesn't get maintained, inspections get rushed. Former Lidl warehouse staff have spoken publicly about the pressure to meet shipping deadlines, even when products looked questionable. When the priority is speed and cost, your safety becomes secondary. So next time you bite into a Lidl biscuit, ask yourself, has anyone actually checked what's in this? Number 14. The Listeria Time Bomb. In September 2023, Lidl recalled their own brand McKennedy corn dogs after laboratory tests found Listeria monocytogenes in the product. Listeria isn't just another food bug. For most healthy adults, it causes flu-like symptoms, unpleasant but survivable. But for seniors, pregnant women, newborns, and anyone with a weakened immune system, it's potentially fatal. Listeria can cross into your bloodstream. It can reach your brain and cause meningitis. For pregnant women, it can cause miscarriage. The Food Standards Agency's own recall notice warns that Listeria infections can be severe and that people over 65, pregnant women, babies and immunocompromised are most vulnerable. Those corn dogs were sitting in freezers across the country before anyone caught the problem. How many people ate them before the recall was announced? How many vulnerable shoppers never saw the warning? And corn dogs aren't the only Listeria concern. Consumer group tests find that roughly 30% of Lidl's UK chicken samples carried Listeria bacteria. Number 13. The Allergen Roulette. If you or someone you love has a food allergy, this section could save a life. Lidl's recall history is riddled with undeclared allergens. These aren't minor labeling errors, they're hidden dangers that can kill. In 2024, Lidl's XXL prawns were recalled because they contained sulfites that weren't declared on the label. For anyone with asthma or a sulfite sensitivity, that's a direct route to a severe reaction. The same year, a tub labelled sweet potato and chicken soup was recalled. The problem? It actually contained barley and wheat soup. Someone grabbed what they thought was a safe, gluten-free option and got a product that could destroy their intestines if they have celiac disease. In 2025, Lidl's Red Hen Tempura chicken was pulled because milk in the batter wasn't properly highlighted on the ingredients. A child with a dairy allergy eating that chicken could go into anaphylactic shock within minutes. Duc de Coeur chocolate tartlets were recalled for undeclared soya. More hidden allergens, more potential hospitalizations. The Food Standards Agency doesn't use gentle language in these notices. They state explicitly that undeclared allergens make the product unsafe to eat. Yet Lidl's labeling failures keep happening. Year after year, product after product. When the frequency is this high, it stops being carelessness and starts being a systemic failure. The people most likely to shop at Lidl, families on tight budgets, elderly people watching every penny, are the same people least able to afford an ambulance trip because a label lied to them. Number 12. The sugar they're feeding your children. Public Health England data shows that between 2015 and 2018, the total sugar in Lidl's own brand breakfast cereals actually increased by 9%. During the same period, Sainsbury's cut their cereal sugar by 23%. Everyone else was reducing sugar. Lidl was adding more. And they knew exactly what they were doing. Those flashy cartoon characters on the boxes, they're designed to grab children's attention and override parental caution. Health campaigners flagged this practice as manipulative. Lidl only pledged to remove cartoon branding from sugary children's products by 2025, years after competitors had already acted. For children, excess sugar doesn't just cause cavities. It's linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and behavioural problems. The NHS warns that too much sugar in kids' diets causes lasting health damage. Lidl positions itself as the smart choice for families. But when your children's cereals have more sugar than your competitors, and you're actively increasing it while others cut back, you're not helping families. You're exploiting them. Number 11. The bakery illusion. Walk into any Lidl and you'll smell it immediately. Fresh bread, warm pastries, the aroma of a traditional bakery. Much of that freshly baked bread is actually flash frozen off-site, shipped to stores, and finished in ovens to create the illusion of fresh baking. The packaging shows pictures of loaves cooling on wooden racks. Artisanal, handcrafted, wholesome. The reality is industrial production in a factory somewhere, frozen, transported, and warmed up for you. Number 10. The horsemeat connection. Remember the 2013 horsemeat scandal, when beef products across the UK were found to contain horse DNA? Most people remember Tesco and Findus being named in the headlines. What they don't remember is that Lidl was implicated too. Illicit horse DNA was found in mince sold through Lidl's discount suppliers. Lidl never publicised it. While bigger chains faced public outrage, Lidl slipped quietly through the scandal with barely a mention. But the problems didn't stop there. In 2018, a meat processor supplying several chains, including Lidl, was fined for mixing cheap pork trimmings into products sold as premium beef burgers. You thought you were buying quality beef. You were actually eating whatever was cheapest to throw in. In 2019, the Food Standards Agency exposed a labelling fraud. Potatoes in Lidl's signature salads were grown abroad but labelled as British. Origin fraud, quietly corrected, barely reported. These aren't ancient history, they're patterns. A supply chain where the pressure for low prices creates incentives to cut corners, substitute ingredients, and mislead customers about what they're actually eating. When something goes wrong at Lidl, it rarely makes front-page news. They operate below the radar. But the official records tell a different story than the friendly discount image they project. Number 9. The egg farm horror. Lidl promises 100% cage-free eggs by 2025. Their marketing shows happy hens and British farmers. It sounds reassuring. Then the cameras went in. In 2023, undercover investigators from the Animal Justice Project filmed inside Sunny Farm, one of Lidl's main UK egg suppliers. What they captured was horrifying. Hundreds of thousands of hens locked in barren cages, not free range, not barn raised, caged. Many of the birds were starving, others had been trampled. Dead hens were left to rot in the cages alongside living birds still laying eggs. This wasn't a rogue facility. This was a major supplier to one of Britain's biggest supermarkets. Lidl confirmed after the exposé that they had dropped the supplier. But for how long had those eggs been reaching Lidl shelves? How many customers bought eggs thinking they came from ethical farms while birds were dying in industrial battery cages. The glossy leaflets promise RSPCA certification and British farming standards. The reality, documented on camera, was animal cruelty on an industrial scale. Lidl's response was reactive, not preventive. They didn't catch the problem. Investigators with hidden cameras did. That tells you everything about how closely Lidl actually monitors its supply chain versus how closely it monitors its public image. Number 8. The forced labour tomatoes. In 2024, a BBC investigation exposed something disturbing about tomatoes sold in UK supermarkets. Products labelled as Italian tomato puree were actually made from tomatoes grown in Xinjiang, China. That's the region where the Chinese government has been accused of using Uyghur forced labour in agricultural production. Lidl quietly admitted that its German arm had briefly used Chinese tomatoes to cover supply shortages. Number 7. The children's cereal they made worse. I mentioned the sugar problem earlier, but this deserves its own spotlight because it reveals how Lidl thinks about your health. Between 2015 and 2018, the UK was in the middle of a childhood obesity crisis. The government was pushing supermarkets to reformulate products, cut the sugar, reduce the salt, make food healthier. Most retailers responded. Sainsbury's cut breakfast cereal sugar by 23%. Others made similar moves. Lidl went the opposite direction. Their cereal sugar went up by 9%. Think about what that decision means. Someone at Lidl looked at the data, looked at the public health crisis, looked at what competitors were doing, and chose to add more sugar to products marketed at children. Why? Because sugar is cheap. It makes things taste good. It keeps costs down and sales up. The health consequences happen later, to other people, and they don't show up on a quarterly earnings report. The Access to Nutrition Initiative noted that Lidl's sugar reduction goals have been criticised as vague. While Tesco, Sainsbury's and Co-op set clear reformulation targets and report progress transparently, Lidl sets minimal targets aligned to outdated 2017 FSA goals. When an NGO described Lidl as last to put policies in place on sugar, they weren't being unfair. They were reading the data. Number 6. The advertising lies. Lidl loves to tell you how much money you're saving. Save over 35% versus Tesco. Save over 30% at Lidl. You've seen the ads. In April 2022, the Advertising Standards Authority ruled those claims were misleading. The ASA found that generic statements like "save 35% implied permanent price cuts across products, but Lidl couldn't substantiate them. The claims were vague, the comparisons were unclear, the numbers were cherry-picked. Lidl had to drop those taglines. But the instinct to mislead didn't disappear. It just moved to the packaging. No unnecessary additives on products, which begs the question, what exactly is necessary? Farm fresh labels on factory processed goods. Artisanal claims on items made in industrial facilities. The ASA has warned supermarkets generally about labelling sugary breakfast cereals as healthy. Lidl's cartoon-branded children's cereals were flagged as among the least healthy on the market. Only under pressure did they agree to remove the cartoon characters. The pattern is consistent. Make claims that sound good. Hope nobody checks. When you get caught, quietly adjust and hope customers don't notice. Number 5. The superbugs in your chicken right now. This is happening today in every Lidl store in the country. Independent laboratory tests examined 40 Lidl brand chicken pieces across Europe. In 23 of those samples, 58%, they found antibiotic-resistant bacteria. More than half the chicken tested was contaminated with bacteria that modern medicine struggles to treat. How does this happen? Through the routine overuse of antibiotics in farming. When you pump livestock full of antibiotics to make them grow faster or prevent disease in crowded conditions, bacteria evolve. They develop resistance. They become superbugs. The World Health Organization calls antibiotic resistance one of the greatest threats to global health. When antibiotics stop working, routine infections become fatal. Minor surgeries become life-threatening. And here's what makes Lidl's situation worse than any other UK supermarket. As recently as 2023, campaign groups identified Lidl as the only major UK retailer with no publicly available antibiotic policy. Tesco had one, Sainsbury's had one, Asda had one, even Aldi had one. Lidl had nothing. They only published a policy after a parliamentary report exposed the gap and publicly embarrassed them. The damage to the food supply had already been done. For seniors, whose immune systems are already compromised, eating chicken contaminated with antibiotic-resistant bacteria is genuinely dangerous. Your body can't fight off what antibiotics can't kill. Lidl could have led on this issue. They chose to be last. Number 4. The harassment they tolerated. In 2023, an employment tribunal examined conditions at a Lidl store in Wallingford. What they found was damning. A young female employee had endured persistent sexual harassment from a manager, lewd comments, unwelcome physical contact, a hostile work environment that made her dread coming to work. She reported it. Lidl's response? The tribunal found that Lidl had tolerated the harassment. They failed to train managers on their own harassment policy. They failed to enforce it. When the victim complained, they mishandled her pay in ways that felt like retaliation. The tribunal held Lidl vicariously liable and awarded the employee over £50,000 in damages. Now, you might think this has nothing to do with your shopping basket, but here's the connection. A company culture that tolerates harassment is a company culture that cuts corners. A company that ignores complaints about abuse is a company that ignores complaints about food safety. When staff are overworked, demoralized, and afraid to speak up, hygiene standards slip. Quality control weakens. The same management attitude that allowed a worker to be harassed is the management attitude that pressures staff to meet targets even when products look off. Former employees have described exactly that. Being pushed to discount expired meat rather than waste it, to meet shipping deadlines even when something seemed wrong. Culture flows from the top, and Lidl's culture, documented in a court judgment, is one where problems get ignored until they become legal liabilities. Number 3. Let's talk about what happens behind the scenes. On Glassdoor and in media interviews, former Lidl UK workers have painted a troubling picture of conditions inside stores and warehouses. Multiple ex-employees have warned of rodents in storage rooms, crates of rotten produce that never got thrown away. One former staffer publicly claimed they found mouldy berries reused for smoothies. Others described managers pressuring staff to meet shipping deadlines, even when meat packs looked questionable. The solution? Quietly discount the expired products rather than waste them, get them out the door, hit the targets. A video viewed tens of thousands of times online appeared to show a mouse scampering behind open salad containers in a Lidl stockroom. Lidl insists they uphold strict hygiene standards, but when staff describe a culture where speed matters more than safety, those official statements ring hollow. Public reviews describe a high-pressure environment, fast tills, strict targets, little tolerance for mistakes. When employees are rushing to avoid management criticism, they're not carefully checking whether that ready meal smells right or whether those dates are accurate. Lidl stores generally score well on official hygiene inspections. No major rat infestation scandal has broken publicly like at some competitors. But the gap between official ratings and staff descriptions suggests that what inspectors see on scheduled visits might not reflect daily reality. Number 2. The pesticide nightmare. Remember that opening statistic? Pesticide levels 153 times the legal limit. Let me put that in context. The Pesticide Action Network UK ranks supermarkets on their efforts to reduce hazardous chemicals in the food supply. When they sent Lidl a questionnaire in 2019, Lidl didn't respond. They earned a low compliance score as a result. The consequence? Lidl's supply chains still rely on many hazardous pesticides, including neonicotinoids, the chemicals blamed for devastating bee populations worldwide. In practice, this means the lettuce or tomatoes you buy at Lidl could carry residues of weed killers and fungicides that are banned in other countries. Chemicals that other supermarkets are actively phasing out. Even Lidl's own head office has admitted they once sold powerful weed killers like glyphosate and 2,4-D in their garden centres. If they're selling toxic chemicals for your lawn, what standards are they applying to the food you eat? A 2024 government analysis found that imported foods carry twice as many pesticide residues as British-grown produce. Lidl relies heavily on imports to maintain those rock-bottom prices. For seniors, pesticide exposure compounds over time. Your liver and kidneys don't detoxify as efficiently as they used to. Every contaminated apple, every sprayed tomato, adds to a chemical burden your body struggles to clear. Competitors like Waitrose and Co-op have removed garden pesticides from their shelves entirely. And Lidl's entire business model is built on finding the cheapest possible source for every product. Even packaging laws have loosened. A best before date can now be applied after import rather than at the source. You might be buying products that sat in warehouses longer than you'd ever know. When I look at everything in this video, the 153 times pesticide levels, the 58% superbug contamination, the metal fragments, the Listeria, the forced labor connections, the allergen failures, the harassment culture, I see a pattern. I see a company that operates at whatever the legal minimum happens to be. And when that minimum keeps dropping, Lidl drops with it. The EU maintained strict standards. The UK walked away from them. And Lidl isn't the company that will voluntarily hold the line. They're the company that will exploit every gap the law allows. Look, I'm not saying you should never shop at Lidl again, but I am saying you deserve to know what you're actually buying. That cheap price tag has hidden costs. Costs in contamination risks, costs in worker treatment, costs in animal suffering, costs in chemicals that accumulate in your body year after year. Before your next Lidl trip, take 2 minutes. Check the FSA website for current recalls. Read the labels properly, not just the front, the ingredients list on the back. Don't let a £2 price tag override your judgment when something looks or smells wrong. You've worked too hard and lived too long to gamble your health on a company that was the last to publish an antibiotic policy and the first to increase sugar in children's cereals. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who shops at Lidl. They deserve to know too. Drop a comment and tell me, have you noticed any of these issues at your local store? I want to hear your stories. And if you want more videos exposing what's really happening in the supermarkets you trust, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.